Have you ever felt that little pang of guilt when booking a flight? You're excited for your vacation, but you also know that flying pumps a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. What if I told you there's a way to help balance that out? It's all about something called carbon credits. Think of them as a permission slip for pollution, but with a twist that actually helps the planet. So what exactly is a carbon credit? In simple terms, it's a tradable permit that represents the right to emit 1 ton of carbon dioxide or the equivalent amount of a different greenhouse gas. Individuals and companies can buy these credits to offset their own emissions. It's like saying, okay, my flight created this much carbon, so I am going to pay for a project somewhere else in the world to remove that same amount of carbon from the atmosphere. The idea is catching on and fast. Experts are predicting that the demand for carbon credits could skyrocket by 2050, potentially increasing by a factor of 100. That's a massive jump. This growth is driven by increasing awareness of climate change, and more companies and countries setting ambitious goals to become carbon neutral. It's becoming a huge part of the global strategy to fight climate change. Now, things get a little more interesting when we look at how these credits are traded. There are 2 main arenas, or markets, for this. The first is the mandatory market, also known as the compliance market. The second is the voluntary market. They work in very different ways, but both have the same ultimate goal: reducing overall emissions. Let's start with the big one, the mandatory market. This is where governments and international bodies step in. They set a hard limit, or a cap, on the total amount of greenhouse gases that can be emitted by certain industries, like power generation or heavy manufacturing. This is often called a cap-and-trade system. Here's how it works. The government issues a limited number of emission allowances, or credits, to companies within these regulated sectors. The total number of allowances matches the overall cap. If a company is super efficient and emits less than its allowance, it has a surplus of credits. What can it do with them? It can sell them to another company that is struggling to stay under its limit and needs to buy extra credits to be compliant. This creates a financial incentive to be green. Companies that invest in cleaner technology and reduce their emissions can make money by selling their unused credits. On the other hand, companies that continue to pollute heavily have to pay up, making it more expensive to be a big emitter. It's a classic supply and demand system, but for the right to pollute. A great real-world example of this is the European Union's emissions trading system, or EU ETS. It's the world's first and largest carbon market. It covers thousands of power stations and industrial plants across 30 countries. Since it was launched, it has helped to significantly reduce emissions in the sectors it covers. It's a powerful tool for forcing large-scale industrial change. So the mandatory market is all about government regulation and big corporations. But what about the rest of us? What about smaller businesses or individuals like you and me who want to do our part? That's where the voluntary market comes in. As the name suggests, participation here is completely optional. There's no government-enforced cap and no penalties for not participating. It's driven entirely by individuals and organizations who voluntarily choose to offset their carbon footprint. When you go online and buy a carbon offset for your flight or your daily commute, you are participating in the voluntary market. The money you pay doesn't just disappear. It goes directly towards funding specific projects around the world that are designed to reduce, avoid, or remove greenhouse gas emissions from the atmosphere. What kind of projects are we talking about? The variety is huge. Your contribution could help fund a reforestation project in the Amazon, where new trees will absorb CO2 as they grow. It could support the development of a wind farm in India, replacing a coal-fired power plant. Or it could help provide clean, efficient cook stoves to families in rural Africa, which reduces emissions from burning wood or charcoal and also improves their health. These projects are verified by third-party organizations to ensure they are actually doing what they claim, and that the carbon reductions are real, measurable, and permanent. When you buy a credit from one of these projects, you are essentially paying them to carry out their emission-reducing work. You get the peace of mind of offsetting your impact, and they get the funding they need to make a positive difference. This voluntary market empowers everyone to take direct action. It's a grassroots approach to climate action that complements the large-scale, top-down regulations of the mandatory market. It allows us to connect our personal choices, like traveling, with tangible, positive environmental projects across the globe. So let's recap the key difference. The mandatory market is a regulated system with a fixed cap on emissions, primarily for big industries. Companies trade credits among themselves to stay within legal limits. The voluntary market is open to everyone, has no cap, and is all about individuals and businesses choosing to fund projects that reduce greenhouse gases. One is about compliance, the other is about personal and corporate responsibility. The beauty of this dual market system is that it attacks the problem from two different angles. The mandatory market uses economic pressure and regulation to force the biggest polluters to change their ways. It drives innovation in heavy industry and ensures that national and international climate targets are met. Meanwhile, the voluntary market builds a culture of climate consciousness from the ground up. It raises awareness and provides a simple, direct way for anyone to contribute. It also channels crucial funding to innovative green projects, especially in developing countries, that might not otherwise get off the ground. These projects not only fight climate change but also often bring social and economic benefits to local communities. As we look towards 2050 and the urgent need to decarbonize our world, both of these markets will be incredibly important. The mandatory market will continue to tighten its caps, making pollution more and more expensive. The voluntary market will likely grow as more people become aware of their own carbon footprint and seek out ways to take responsibility for it. So the next time you think about your own carbon footprint, remember the world of carbon credits. It is a complex but fascinating system that is turning the problem of pollution into a powerful tool for positive change. Whether through government mandates or individual choices, it's one of the key ways we are working together, as a global community, to build a cleaner, more sustainable future for everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this gave you a clearer picture of what carbon credits are all about. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.